Hi, everybody. Today we have a really special guest, a man who has no face on any social platform, but today he is showing his face on this little screen, which I am so happy about, Zain. Thank you so much for coming through. And thank you so much for giving me your time, for sharing your journey that we'll get to know more about throughout this episode. You are one of the first people that I really wanted to get to know more of, since you do work in the Web3 space. You are a designer. You recently did an art exhibition in Islamabad that I sadly missed. So I think I really want to get more into the headspace of someone who is in the artistic field, who has a design background. I just want to understand, like, how does this whole thing come together? Like, इतने से दिमाग में इतने बड़े ideas कहाँ से आते हैं? You know? So I honestly just want to understand that. I'm going to give it to you, and you can introduce yourself. Have you always been in the design space, या फिर कहाँ से शुरुआत हुई है, in your journey?
Hi, I am Zain Naqvi. I mean, I'll keep it bilingual if that is okay.
Yes.
I mean, in English, no. एक तो इतना सा दिमाग नहीं काफी बड़ा है. I'm a big guy, so I can carry the randomness around. That is like very different things that go inside my head.
Yeah.
I come from a design background. I graduated from National College of Arts in 2012, 2013. That would be my graduation year. I did my degree in communication design as it was known back then.
Yep.
Up to obviously, things have been updated because, so much has changed in the last decade. In the last decade, I primarily worked in startups, with startups. So, when my peers were mostly venturing into agency jobs or, typical design jobs, this was around the 2014, 2015 startup boom in Pakistan. So I started venturing, into more like the startup side. So worked with some wonderful cracks and, founders from Lums, Fast,
Nice.
and maybe that kind of thing rubbed off. So
Yeah.
despite coming from like a design background, that founder kind of a thing, that entrepreneurial spirit, that okay, what is happening? What do these guys do?
Yeah.
And tech had always been part of my life and my business. Like even back in undergrad, I used to, talk about generative art and sequential art, and even back in 2011 and 12,
Wow.
AR, VR, and nobody used to believe us, me and a couple of others who were like very, I would say bullish on technology changing what art would be. And secondly, like it was still very new for them. I think it was still, if you think the world of 2012 or 13, consider, talking of the metaverse or talking AR, VR, talking of Tesla or what the iPhone has become or what Apple has become, it would still be a very alien concept, specifically sitting in Pakistan, Maybe if it was somewhere in the West, it would have been different. But back then we were still dealing with, issues such as terrorism, as regular bombings. Bombings were like the norm back then. And so the art, the design space, it was responding to its environment, rather than thinking of these sci-fi concepts that were going through in my head. And maybe the reason for that is that since like childhood, I've been like a huge sci-fi nerd. So I've always been into, Asimov and all these people. So, and I still believe that in the Pakistani education system, if you can make a third grader read Asimov or some other Herbert, any of these sci-fi people, it can change how we think as a as a species, I would believe.
Wow.
So
That is a really
I kept
big
on,
statement.
coming back to the topic. I kept on working with startups, worked with some very wonderful people, worked on some very wonderful products. Sadly, a couple of them were a little ahead of their time, I guess.
Yeah.
So despite having, seats and seats, or just being very, very young and brash and not knowing how to manage financials, a lot of times we would get burnt out. But a few of the products, they did get, overtaken by larger companies, by multinationals, or we exited through that. So that was a wonderful experience. After that, I did my master's in art education from Bacon House National University. And through that association, also started like an on and off kind of a, like a visiting faculty position there. So I did that for like a couple of years, and that was like sort of my just sitting low and trying to figure out what is.
One question on this part. It's really, I'm so happy that you were able to study art, throughout your undergrad as well as masters, because I feel like a lot of kids, I have my own friends as well, like they have this passion to try arts, to do arts, but then somehow, either it's parents not, giving them a platform or giving them the leverage to try what they want to, or them not having enough knowledge of where to start off. So I feel like I just want to understand, like, how has your support system been throughout your journey when you were starting off in the field of art?
I think I have the most stereotypical parent set in the history of the world. My mom's a teacher, my
Right.
dad's a government servant, and I don't think that it gets more stereotypical than that. They're both professionals. They've
Yep.
worked throughout their lives. Mashallah, they're retired now.
Yep.
So it was fair, I think, on their end to have this sort of pessimism,
Yeah.
because when you look at the art and design in Pakistan, the opportunities are very few. There are a lot of graduates, and before the advent of, let's say, the startup boom, or the little that our film industry has been doing, or like the music scene, it is still very hard to make money in the arts.
Yeah. That's
I
true.
mean, it's much easier to make. It's not easy to make money anywhere, but comparatively, it's
Yes.
much more easier
That's
to
true.
make money in, let's say, business or finance, or uh, even entrepreneurship, because you have a support system. In the arts right now, there is no support system. They, in the sense that everything is a little informal, I would say, sadly. So, I mean, there were apprehensions, and I did fight a lot back then. I had a lot of angst issues. Oddly enough, I am in my early 30s right now, and my 20s were very different. They were like, the
Yeah.
80s ka Amitabh kind of a guy, angry at everything, angry at everything. I mean, I don't understand, like, why. Like, if I sit today and like look at myself back then, it was like, there was so much anger even in my work.
Oh my
Angry at
God.
the system, angry at the education
Yeah.
system, angry at the parents, angry at my friends, at my relationships, angry at my profession. But then, so what I sort of started realizing was that maybe कुछ चीजों का वक्त होता है, उन
Correct.
चीजों का वक्त अभी नहीं है. So essentially, what I am doing right now is the same thing that I was doing 8 years ago. But it's just that the world has had to catch up,
Exactly.
and they're finally here.
Yeah, but I also want to understand, like, what were your goals and what was the mindset like, and the shift that has taken you from your 20s until the 30s. Like you mentioned, you're doing the same thing that you were doing 8 years ago, and absolutely right. It takes a lot of time for the world to catch up on, especially with, innovation. And we talk about this term quite a lot, and it's thrown around, like very random, but I feel like it's really hard when you actually get to know, the actual innovation that comes up with so many ideas that people do not necessarily understand when it comes out at that moment. So it takes time, right, for the people to learn and adapt to it. So I just want to understand, okay, how has that journey been for you with art then, art now, with Zen then, and Zen now?
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, art then was dealing with, the repercussions of the post 9/11 world that we lived in, you know. So everybody was very focused on that. If you look at the literature that was being produced in Pakistan, if you look at, the art that was produced in Pakistan, the kind of films that were produced in Pakistan, all these, I think it was Khuda Ke Liye, if I remember correctly, like one of the first big movies that was produced in Pakistan. They're all dealing with that post 9/11 identity crisis that we were feeling. And so obviously for me, there I didn't feel that that was space, that that's resonated with the type of things that I was trying to do, or I was trying to talk about. And then all of a sudden, if you look at Zan then, so obviously he's had his struggles.
Yes.
But one thing that I think was missing in my personality as well was this sort of a methodology of what I want and how I'm trying to achieve it. I think with a lot of art grads that is the case, because again एक formal सीढ़ी नहीं है वहाँ पे, तो वो चीज होती नहीं. I mean, if you're an artist, I say that I'm a designer. I'm not an artist. I'm a hardcore designer. Even my art practice, it's coming out of it. So all the works that I do, they are pieces of art, but they're created by a very design-minded person in a very design-minded manner. So that is, I think, I need to make it clear, because if you if you just do a Google search Pakistani artists, 20,000 names will appear. If you search Pakistani designers, there's nobody who is there. And I'm glad you mentioned Abbas, because Abbas has been doing some pretty amazing work, and I've been following him for years and years. And since his earliest days, venturing into the UI, UX interaction, whatever you want to call it now. But back then it was nothing. When these things came in Pakistan, I mean, we just had graphic designers. I was a graphic designer, quote unquote, and we were trying to transition into UI UX. And I think that also helped me understand a lot of things, because in a pure design manner you can create something that is very brilliant, but that form follows function kind of a thing, specifically in interaction design, or today like all these AR VR, even in Web3 NFTs, whatever we are doing, you need to understand that creative process, or the process that okay, what is going on behind the in the head of the user. So in case of, let's say, PFP NFTs, a lot of people have this apprehension that yeah, these things are very simple, they're very like stylistically cartoon looking essentially.
Yeah.
And a lot of projects that were making these hugely detailed, well crafted PFPs, they failed. But the biggest reason you need to recognize is that most of PFPs, I don't wear digital watches, but are appearing like, on your wrist.
Yeah.
And you need like a symbolic approach to that rather than an organic, very well made drawing, So I think that shift happened where I, started understanding who the user is, what their demands might be, how it might differ from, my personal biases. There might be something that I absolutely love, that I absolutely adore, but I might, the user might not like it, and I don't think there's anything that I can do about it. I need to adapt accordingly. So in that manner, I think a lot of changes happened inside me personally.
No, but I was saying that I really love the
No
idea that
worries.
you were talking about. But I just want to understand, Zen, you just mentioned about getting in the head of a user, right? So I also want to, since you are a designer, I really want to understand like what goes on in your head when you do come up with concepts. For example, like let's take the most recent example, right? You did an exhibition in Islamabad, which was very, very beautiful. I saw a few pictures and honestly, it was amazing, really nice. So I really want to understand like what is the thought process behind like a concept? Like how do you come up with it? How do you bring it to like an art piece that's visually available for the rest of us to see? So how does that process basically look like?
Personally, for a long time, like that rare person who's pretty much, visited a lot of exhibitions, a lot of museums, whenever I've traveled, even
Right.
outside. And my journey away from design into tech led me back into art and design. So that was like, a very weird kind of an experience that I'm coming full circle, because I am like primarily working in tech. I'm working in Web3. Yes, I'm handling design and creative strategy and brand positioning and all that. But essentially, it's more tech than design or art. And then whenever I got to travel and I got to meet people, the role that art and design has in the West is very different than the role that it has in the East. And I feel like slowly we need to uh, go towards that called sort of a cultural capital, if I may use the word. So with this specific exhibition, the idea was pretty simple. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated. I don't like to make my work very complicated. Uh, it's like simply, that what if, a painting can have a feed of its own, you know? We as humans have a feed that is constantly going on. I open like, let's say, your profile. So there's like, okay, Sania shared this, Sania talking about this, she is, this, she just spoke at this event, and she's like maybe changed her, image or banner or whatever. So it's like, a constant flow.
True.
Based on what I am presuming who you are. And like, that's how our conversation started as well, right? That you don't see my face, but my presence is there, right? I'm constantly doing something, talking about something. So my idea was, what if like a painting can do that, you know? And like I use a lot of public domain imagery from like these old European museums. And so even that kind of a creates like, this dialogue between the East and the West. Because usually what has happened is that things get created in the East, and either they get adapted for the West, or they are made for the West, and we consider them the be all and end all of everything. So that's like something that we have in. because of, being a post-colonial society and everything. So my concern was, what if a painting can have a dialogue,
Wow.
And one of the best feelings was that people came in and there were so many people just sitting and staring at that, having
Oh,
forgotten about
wow.
their
Oh
cell
my
phones,
God, that's
which
beautiful.
was an achievement. Despite being in Web3, which is like crazy, I mean, uh, I came into this space in December 2020, but I feel like it's been a good 12, 13 years. Like
Wow.
if I
Oh my
start
God.
looking back, I think
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
amazed. So I mean, for example, Ape Harbour is just a year old, you know. Board Ape Yacht Club is just slightly over,
Mm-hmm.
almost two, But
Yeah.
it seems like these things have existed for like, a good decade or so.
Oh my
And
God.
so time is very crazy. So I think personally, my desire was to stop the time and just, bring it
Mm-hmm.
a bit, slow. I mean, I even had this conversation with the curator of Dastan Go Yamad, and I'm like, we were talking about the pace of that thing. कि इसको
Mm-hmm.
कितनी pace पे चलाना है, कितनी speed पे चलाना है. And we were discussing, and I'm like, it's the specific slow speed, and I do not want to make it fast. Like, this is the place because this isn't a design that I'm doing for some app or for some
Mm-hmm.
product that
Yeah.
I can, do whatever I want because it's an art piece. So maybe that's where I differentiated that, okay, यहाँ पे the viewer, who we might call as the user as well,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna do what I want them.
Yeah.
I want them to slow down, sit, take it in, forget about their phones, forget about their worries, maybe just contemplate a little and go on. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. I mean, in that regard, I think it was pretty successful.
That
Thank
is so
heavens.
beautiful. Yeah. Honestly, mashallah, mashallah. Like now that I'm understanding, the vision behind the beauty that I saw in the pictures. Honestly, it's so, so beautiful. Like for me, like as you were talking, I was trying to go through, like visually trying to understand the whole thing. It was beautiful. So I just want to understand if we can talk more about, because you just mentioned about your Web3 journey as well. And that was literally my next question, that how did you get in to Web3 from Web2? But it seems like you've been preparing and already been doing all of this since, like, it wasn't even called Web3 in a sense. So like maybe if we can talk more about that journey, how was your first experience like? Because you are a co-founder of your own startup as well. Maybe talking about the brands that you're working with and also creating your own. Let's talk about that.
So essentially, before venture, working in this space, I was working with this animation studio,
Mm-hmm.
and we're working on a feature length product, which hopefully will see the light of day soon as well.
Yep.
So and I remember like around November or December, 2020. If you remember, the Wall Street bets thing happened.
Yes.
So, and I'm a hardcore Reddit user,
Oh
so I
wow.
do
Okay.
like to, use like the mind of Reddit. I'm a Redditor like since ages
Mhm.
and ages,
Wow.
and I mean, I think even if we go back, I'm a child of the internet, as they would say. From
Right.
Minecraft to probably to early days of Yahoo to maybe even
Wow.
before that. All
Okay.
these. So I've grown up essentially on the internet in a way.
Mhm.
And the internet that we knew and loved was very very different because it was still in the age of creating knowledge and disseminating it rather than creating social PR as it exists
Right.
today. I mean, all that came to a spearhead where I was in that Reddit of Wall Street bets,
Mhm.
and these guys
You
were
were
trying to
there?
do this AMC schools. I was there. I was there. I was in that chat
Wow.
with Robinity and everything. All those threads.
Yeah.
And I come from a design background. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not a business guy.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, this is something very interesting happening. And during that weekend, I remember I like saw every Wall Street movie that was there. I saw like The Big Short. I saw like Wolf of Wall Street, and I had like zero interest or understanding of this world.
Mhm.
And I still don't have a lot of understanding of this world, but
Yeah.
I just went through it. I read a couple of books on what was happening, and I
Wow.
was like, maybe is there a way that I can buy shares sitting in Pakistan? Maybe I can squeeze
Yeah.
AMC. All these big like AMC squeeze. I can be part of it.
Mhm.
But what happened was obviously it's really hard to buy, shares for New York Stock Exchange sitting in, I was in Lahore back then. So in Lahore. So, but one thing led to another, and like a sub thread led me into these things called the NFTs. And I mean, these were essentially similar to stocks, but they were, I mean, they had pictorial images and they were more artsy, I would say. So that's where like it sort of came to me, okay, I've had this little knowledge of finances, of finance, and I design art ki to knowledge hai hai. So what is going on here? I mean, what am I supposed to do with this? Because you need to understand like the people sale hasn't happened yet. You know, NFTs are not the rage that they will go on to become. It's still early December. I do remember only one other person who had been using this word again and again. Uh, that's Naqvi. He's an artist, Pakistani as well. And I had seen, this word NFTs appear on his Instagram a couple of times.
Oh.
I reached out to him. I'm like, what is going on? And he explained to me, like, okay, this is what it is. It's digital art. It's, on the blockchain. And obviously, I was doing my own research as well during that time. And that's how essentially it started. And, the funny thing is, from like, I remember there was like this early NFT Pakistan Discord, which had like a couple, 12, 13 people in it. And every one of those people went on to either became a big name in the space, or have a project of their own, or work with a project, that was big in the space. All of them, and uh, I mean, it went haywire after that, So the thing was like, I think it was timing, but it was also like this sort of a moment where you would see like, lightning in a bottle sort of a thing. Because I tell this to everybody because it's very funny for me. I'm like I sleep like a rock. I'm a, my sleep time is my sleep time. I put my phone away and everything. But I remember staying up for like 3, 4 nights, just studying what NFTs are, who are the people who are working here. And what it did was that it led me to connect to, all these big players in the space, So, I mean, Foundation, Daper Labs, Super Rare, they're huge names today, but they weren't those huge names back then. They were just startups who were starting out, who were also trying to, capture this market. And, that's how I entered the space. When I started, looking around Facebook for like people who were doing NFTs, got scammed a couple of times, So because obviously I did not know that, how crypto works and how things work. So I think I lost like 40,000 Pakistani rupees in that scam, which is quite a lot, come to think of it. And I was like, yeah, oh my God, I got scammed. And I mean, but I mean, a month later, I had gone, and gotten that guy, I like figured out who he was, where he was, told him, like stop doing this. So, like it just took me a week to, get into the group that okay, what is happening here? One thing that I did understand was that the space is pretty brilliant. It's the next, logical step in the history of the internet or the future of the internet. But like people maybe in emerging economies are gonna try and come in to use it for their personal advantage before they can look at the larger picture.
That's true.
So yeah. Then I mean ventured on Twitter and Discord.
I think it's really important that you mentioned that because when the NFT rage started, the hype, there were a lot of like people putting in NFTs. They didn't really see it as art. Like it wasn't art in the beginning. It was pretty much just pictures here and there of doodles of something like normal JPEGs. Basically, people were buying and basically just taking the most advantage as they could. So I just want to understand, since you've seen that from behind the scenes as well, and you are someone who has that art and creativity power as well. So where do you see this trend going in the future?
I personally think for me NFTs have never been about just art. Despite the fact that I belong to that minority who practice them as art, I think they're more a powerful tool of dissemination. So I mean, आप Photoshop को या Unreal Engine को you don't limit them for let's say creation of art or for creation of games or creation of filmmaking, right? They can encompass the entire thing. I mean, Unreal has been working with NASA on projects, So that's like really crazy to think about, that they're trying to recreate the surface of Mars and this Martian surface and everything. And so I personally think that NFTs are more than that, specifically with SPTs, soulbound tokens. I
Yes.
think when
Yes.
they came in, it solves a lot of our problems. When a baby is born, there can be a wallet for them that needs to be passed down at 18, and that child or that individual gets their birth certificate, their ID cards, their travel history, their passports as an SPT. And that's it. You're not losing it. The government is keeping a track of it. I mean, it's pretty logical. So I do remember, like, but the pushback was crazy because I mean, I remember I had ventured onto Twitter at that time, and like Discord, and
Mhm.
all these projects had started popping up. People were buying CryptoPunks, and I remember thinking CryptoPunks are very expensive at 2 ETH,
Yeah.
and I was like, these are very expensive at 2 ETH.
At
And
that
then
time.
they would become
At
like
that
this,
time.
so 2 ETH would, feel nothing for a CryptoPunk right now. I mean, if if I can just travel back in time and tell
Yeah.
one thing to my own younger self, I would like, buy CryptoPunks, buy apes,
Yeah.
and that. And probably he's not going to understand, because it's very weird to sort of articulate what was happening.
Were you able to get your hands on the apes, right?
Yes, I have one ape. Yeah.
So how was that for you?
Later on, a mutant.
Was this your first biggest NFT purchase?
Yes. And the funny story is, it was actually a gift for working on Ape Harbour.
Oh,
So,
yes. We have to
because
get
I
into
was
that.
the only team member in Ape Harbour, I
Mhm.
was the only team member in Ape Harbour. There are only three guys who we started off the Ape Harbour,
Mhm.
who did not have an ape. So they were like, what, like, this is like a brand IP kind of a thing. So
Mhm.
let's get you an ape as well. And I was like, okay, cool. And I remember, when like the prices went crazy and everything, I'm like, listen, I'm just feeling bad. Do you want this back? Like, so, I'm not going to take his name because he's not talks, but Melmac, the partner, he's like, what are you talking about? It's yours. I'm like, no, I'm just asking because this is going crazy. And I remember that's when basically apes hit double digits.
Mhm.
So, and then they would go on to hit triple digits, and
Yes.
then life would become another bit. Although I had like a very weird reaction to it as well, because
Mhm.
at like the top of the bull run, even like the tiniest of NFTs that I had minted, or the projects that I had been part of, you know, they were going absolutely crazy. So every morning you would wake up to crazy offers on, these little NFT JPEGs of yours.
Yeah.
And like I remember talking to a couple of friends, and I'm like, yeah, this is not okay. This is messing with my head. You're not supposed to be getting, these ridiculous offers
Yeah.
on your art or your purchase every day. This is becoming crazy. And also maybe that was the time of realization that this is not gonna last.
Hmm.
So I did prep for it a bit. I mean, I did. I mean, I sold some of my stuff at the top,
That's
because I
really
just
good. That's
didn't
really
feel
good.
secure enough. I mean, in hindsight, yeah, in hindsight, definitely.
Mhm.
But then you always wish that, okay, maybe वो 15-20% किया था, तो शायद 50% कर लिया होता.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe more of a diversified portfolio. But as I said, I do not come from an investing background. I don't
Mhm.
come from a finance background.
Yeah.
So for me, learning how to trade, or how to things up and down, has been a journey. It still is.
Amazing.
So मुझसे कोई अभी भी, if somebody talks crypto, I tell them, yeah, I'm not a crypto guy. I am not a crypto guy, at all. But
Mhm.
the thing is that, yes, today I can read charts. I mean, मुझे समझ आ जाता है कि अच्छा यार, ये जो है ना, कैंडल क्या कह रही है? Is this a
Right.
bullish signal? Is this a bearish signal?
Nice.
And
Yeah,
so,
this is so
because
cool. अब मुझे अपनी lingo में बताओ, what do you see here as a designer?
as a designer, I just see a lot of red and green. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think, but considering the flow of the pattern, maybe it's making a cup and a handle, and
Mm-hmm.
it's generally a bullish. So if your chart is making this cup, and
Yeah.
then it forms like a handle, it usually means that the market is about to go up. So I feel like it's making like that sort of a cup. If it was like coming down, like
Mm-hmm.
steps, then it would be
Like
like
cup,
a
you mean like in
slightly
this way?
ding.
Like cup would be like that?
No, no, this is Yeah. The image that came before. So you can see. So if you look at like the chart at like a week or a month,
Yeah.
wherever you can see like cups forming, usually the market picks up after that. But wherever the falls are very abrupt, you know.
Yes.
So those are just little tiny things that I mean, I've picked up along the way, and you can see how whenever like the wicks keep getting bigger, it reverses. So, for example, if it's a huge green wick,
Yes.
after that it's a bearish downturn, and if like the bearish wicks get huge, the hammers flip and it becomes like a green, which is essentially bullish.
Oh.
So yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I love this so much. Thank you. No, but seriously, I feel like it's call ke baad, we definitely need to have maybe like another session after this interview, whenever it's possible, to just go through this because it's so interesting the way you look at this. It's so interesting. I love it.
Again, I'm not a finance guy. This is just like a layman's understanding of
Yeah, of
how
course.
the charts work.
Yes. And no, it's not a financial advice. People, please do your own research. So then, if we can also get into your story about how you started Ape Harbour. For people who don't know, if you can also give a little more context of what it actually is, and the mission and the vision behind it.
See, I mean, it started off with this discussion in like, I believe the Board Ape Yacht Club
Yes.
Discord, where these couple of apes were discussing, that the apes are there. It's called a yacht club, but
Yeah.
it does not have any yachts. So, so they ventured out and they were looking for an artist to essentially come in and, make those yachts. And I had worked on a project years back, which had been shelved, but I had like a crazy portfolio of these yacht designs and island designs and
Oh God.
ideas. So,
Okay.
like in this visual development kind of a stage that was shelved. Like that project never went anywhere. And these guys reached out. That was basically my introduction to Board Ape Yacht Club as well. I did not know what it was.
Right.
So, because I was looking at NFTs more like on Super Air Foundation, more like fun stuff, and less of this OpenSea always seemed a little fishy to
Yeah.
me. There were always these like scammy projects there at times. So there still are, sadly. So, and these guys reached out, so I showed them the portfolio, and they were pretty happy with it.
Wow.
Essentially, what Ape Harbor is doing is it's trying to connect the global, yachting industry with this, metaverse-based harbor that we've created. So
Wow.
essentially, everybody has these cities and these, everybody's trying to develop like, these things, but we are essentially developing a harbor for the metaverse. So, and to connecting these two industries together. To somebody, it might not make sense that, why do I need to have yachts in, the metaverse? Why do I need to have characters in the metaverse? But you need to understand that this is still like essentially how, like consider this like, the early days of the .com,
Yeah.
that you're essentially owning these items that might formulate your life later on, So,
Okay, that is such an interesting view on this. That is yeah, wow. Okay, go on.
So that's, what essentially we've been doing there. And I couldn't go there, but my partners, they, went to the Monaco yacht fair and everything.
Oh, wow.
So we're
Okay.
just connecting there because I don't handle like the business part for Ape Harbor. That's not what I do. Mine is more art and the creative side. So yeah, and then we did like these AR yacht drops, which was pretty fun because people were dropping their yachts and dinghies because we have like different categories. So like you have like these really rickety small boats that you start off with, and then you make your way up to the luxury yachts.
Oh, that's
So and
amazing.
they keep on getting more sci-fi as you go up. People were dropping their AR yachts, in like Times Square and like taking pictures and like in like
Wow.
actual, canals and like, canals in Edinburgh and like, canals in, Kent, Belgium. So, and like even a couple of friends of my own, they were, experimenting with that. And I mean, the entire work for that was done in Pakistan. I oversee that and like did all that. So one thing that I would just like to add here is that one thing that essentially I would like more Pakistani, designers, artists, anybody who's working in the field to do is maybe take lesser pays, but get better credits. You know,
Wow.
we are always the
Yeah.
backlog of everything. You know, you pick up something and it will have 200 Pakistanis working on it, but they will never have their names out there. And I am glad, like with Ape Harbor, uh, the founders here were very open about the fact, you know, I was in Germany a couple of months ago, and a lot
Mhm.
of people there were amazed because, I'm like, Ape Harbor's DNA,
Mhm.
it's like 70-80% German, and it's 20-30% Pakistani. That is
Wow.
what how it's going to be. And it's a, it's a thank you. It's a it's a weird but wonderful combination, and I
Oh,
learned a lot working with those guys. Like there is a reason जो वो German proficiency वाली बात करते हैं
mhm.
ना कि they take it to the extreme and then some. So अब वो having worked like for over like almost 2 years,
Yeah.
uh, वो जो थोड़ा सा pushing वाला element है ना beyond your own comfort zone, तो वो
Mm.
भी शायद थोड़ा सा duplicate हो गया. And yeah, so that is what Ape Harbor's story is. It is still ongoing, and let's see where it goes, how it's headed.
I am
I
honestly rooting for you guys. Yeah, it sounds like such an amazing project. And I'm actually so glad that you mentioned this thing about how about we look at this whole, NFTs and the Web3 and metaverse in a way like how you might want to live your life in the future, right? Collecting all these items to build that life for yourself. It's such an interesting perspective. And if there's definitely, I'm going to take away a lot of things, a lot of learnings from this call, but definitely one of the most important learning is that perspective that you shared. So thank you so much for that. If we can get more into your own startup as well that you've created, which is Alter, what is
yeah.
it about? Where is this going? What is, why did you start this? So yeah.
So essentially, I mean, having like discussions in the space specifically with people from South Asia. Back then, there were a couple of Indian people that I met, a few Sri Lankans, Nepalis. The one thing that I felt was that it's still a niche. I mean, the metaverse NFT space is still a niche in South
Yep.
Asia. The Far East is catching up. UAE, MENA regions are working like crazy.
Really
But
hardcore, yeah. The way I
yeah,
see the ecosystem developing in Dubai right now, insane.
yes. But I do have like slight concerns there. So
Sure,
maybe like let's keep it on, a slight separate note. I do want to come back to this
sure.
because I've had like some very weird experiences and I do want to be vocal about it.
Amazing. Okay, got
So the thing is that, in Pakistan, all I saw were that there were these artists who were selling their artworks,
it. Mm-hmm.
or there were these devs who were providing services, but there wasn't like, a company. So essentially, Alter is not Pakistan based. My partner, Ayaz bin Sabir, is, based in the UK.
Okay.
It was three of us who started that. It was me, Ayaz, and Mehmet Khwaja. We started Alter back, in 2021. And the aim was that we're going to partner up with projects, but on a stake based basis. So
Okay.
rather than, just
Mm-hmm.
me going in and saying, okay, I can help you with, let's say, the brand strategy and design. So credit taking sort of thing is really important, and with Alter, we went ahead, and what we did was that rather than just being a one-off thing, we
Mm-hmm.
go as a team, we present our skills, whether that is brand strategy, whether that is product management, whether that is even providing Discord managers.
Right.
So essentially, that's how Alter started. We had been in this service provider kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality for a very very long time. We partnered up with a lot of projects. Worked with, obviously did a little stuff for Ape Harbor later on. So those two things got connected.
Right.
I sort of, merged a couple of things that were, essentially outsourced, for Ape Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, in the same manner, we worked with this early project called Polar Intelligence Agency. And there was a time which seems unbelievable and very funny now when koalas were selling higher than bored apes. I mean, there
Wow.
was a point,
Oh my
that
God.
the vehicles were at like 2, 3 ETH,
Mm-hmm.
and the koalas were selling for 10 ETH and 5 ETH and all that. And like in hindsight, it's pretty crazy to think of that. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's one of my biggest losses, I think, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna hold this koala, although I
Mm-hmm.
could have maybe bought another mutant back then.
Oh my.
So what's done is done. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
You
True.
know, and then I mean got to connect with a lot of wonderful people. Then last year, I think around late July, randomly we were just, discussing things and meme sales were happening. So we just, got in touch with these three guys from Pakistan who had this meme called Friendship Ended. It was a very kitschy kind of a, thing, but it was like, their image was legendary on the
Yeah.
internet.
True,
So
true, true. No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
so despite whatever feelings we might have for this,
Yeah.
this is still a pretty interesting image that has like a legendary status.
Yeah.
So, did that, that sold for a crazy, crazy amount on Foundation, but with Foundation,
Oh my God.
sort of, auctioned that. And then, like in the meme side of things, represented Sarem Akhtar, who is the disappointed cricket meme guy.
Yes.
So his
Yeah,
project
yeah,
was a free mint, but I'm still very proud of it because it was one of the first free mints. So now, free mints have become the norm, but we did free mints, maybe 3 months before free mints became a thing. So that is, I mean, consulted on that project because essentially that wasn't mine. My partners were leading it, but I sort of kept in the loop.
right.
Because obviously back then Ape Harbour was also, going absolutely crazy. And yeah, with Alter, I mean, currently there is we've shifted from like an agency kind of a module to more of a, like a startup module because we are working on a few in-house products.
Nice.
So
Okay,
we
that's
are in talks with a couple of people for a pre-seed round for that as well. Because essentially up till now we've been bootstrapped. So we made a, whatever money we made, we've put it back into business.
right.
But now I think like going forward, like I would still consider myself an alter to like mid-tier, entities, right? So
Right.
we're not really the, the A-listers. We're maybe like B plus A minus kind of a category. And then there are like all these very smaller
Yeah.
companies, and then there's like scammy companies. So, but now I think essentially is the time where either you get, you become part of a larger thing or you become a larger thing yourself. So we are trying to go for the latter. So, I mean, that's why we've been, talking to VCs and everything. So we can expand because, I mean,
Amazing.
despite the things being slow, I think this is the time to essentially build
Absolutely.
because the kind of relationships, Sanya, that I've formed in like I would say the last 2 months have been more fruitful, more quality based than they were through the entire bull run. Because during the bull run, everybody was coming in, okay, let's make money, let's get out,
Yeah.
let's make money, get out.
True.
But this is the time where essentially, companies that might be here for decades would form. So I mean, even with BAYC, I've been thinking of one thing that what happens when an NFT project becomes multi-generational? Because forget about the price points. Yes, it has a lot of names, it has a lot of
Yeah.
celebrity clout attached to it. But the fact that holders, upload pictures of their baby's first day and they're wearing, Bored Ape merch, that is a crazy cultural shift if you think about it. And
That's
I'm
true.
not just saying this is Bored Apes, it's like a lot of other projects as well, That then what actually happens when, like, the apes are treated as like, NFT, I don't know, Rolls Royce, that okay, this ape was handed down to me by my dad. So I am, right now interested, supremely interested in that. And I mean, I'm not saying that because I'm a holder and part of that, but even with Artifact, with CryptoPunks, although they're part of the same Yuga ecosystem now, uh, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty interesting to look at. That what's the future of these, items? Because essentially, for 30, 35, almost 40 years that the internet has existed, we've not really owned our own selves.
True.
So our Facebook profiles, they probably die after a certain time. So, I mean, that's just one thing that I've been thinking about. Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, it's amazing. Yeah. Oh my God. I will get to the point where I really need your advice on for people on how to get started in this space because even listening to you is getting me so excited. I'm like, yeah, oh my God, there's so much to do. It's amazing. Oh my God, super cool. Yeah. Honestly, like hats off to you and the team for building what you guys are building and for still staying in the space when a lot of people ran off. So kudos to you for that. And I really want to understand, Zen. Okay, you were trying to talk earlier about this Dubai coming crypto hug beach mein thoda sa naam dala, because this is what we see on the outside at least. And I feel like there's a lot of things in crypto space that we do see only from the outside, right? There's very little knowledge about behind the scenes or what's actually happening on ground, because, you know, PR and one person talks about it, about the space, and then bus, it's off the grid,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about, you know, projects like that or the space in general, to be honest?
I probably should badmouth a couple of people, but that's not really who I am.
Yeah.
The thing is that, I mean, I was talking to a lot of these founders of like, conferences in Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, okay, you've done this, and come over, we will give you a slot and this and that, and it's $10,000. I'm like, excuse me, what? So I didn't understand at first. So they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the speaker ticket for our conference is like, 8K, 12K, 20K, however you want to come
Oh my God.
in. And then I was like, okay, this is a one-off occurrence. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
this conference is just there to make money. I talked to two others, same thing. I think only one, specific group or company who I was supposed to go and present and meet, but I couldn't because I had like a family thing, so I had to like cancel it at the last moment and stay back in Pakistan. But like, except for them, everybody is just inviting people who do not know anything about the
Mm-hmm.
space. So
Mm-hmm.
my concern is with, let's say, okay, so you are trying to have an interview with, somebody in the Web3 space. You go out, you do your research, you understand, you dig a few things about this person, that okay, who he or she is,
Yeah.
what have they done in the space, what has their journey been, and then you invite them to your podcast, right, or your
Yes.
blog, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're asking people to just come in and talk if they can pay 10K, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any sense. And all of these conferences, once I look at the speakers, I'm like, yeah, these guys are nobodies,
Mm-hmm.
These guys are doing and talking about things that we did at Alter, that we did at Ape Harbour, and that we rejected. We did not even make public that thing, and they are trying to talk about building entire companies based on those little ideas, like things that are not even needed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, thankfully, then others started coming in, both locally and internationally. So,
Yeah.
for example, Meta School, Fatma Rizwan,
Amazing job.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, so here's a person who's been in the space, whether she's been, an artist, designer, developer, business manager, product lead, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
She has something to show for it, right?
Yes.
You have scammy people coming in, and then the entire space gets a bad name, right?
Yes.
It gets a bad repo. The second thing is that, the general media, for whatever reason, whether it's bias, whether it's, aversion to change,
Mm-hmm.
they do not portray the good things that are happening here. So I can't quote on the exact sum, but Jadu Hologram, Asad J. Malik,
Yes.
they did like this huge, a fundraiser for the floods in Pakistan, and they donated
Wow.
like this huge sum for ED Foundation. And now this should have been the news, but the
Yeah.
news was, the FPX fiasco.
Mm.
So once you're putting out negative news, I mean, bearish, bullish, those are trends. Those are, going to keep on happening.
That's
They're
true.
going to come, they're going to go.
Yep.
That's okay. Happens in, banking, happens in art as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like this inherent bias, and letting these, very, like, I would say, like scammy and like, vulture almost kind
Mm-hmm.
of people come in
Yeah.
and ruin a good space. So that's why I'm saying that maybe, this bear market was bound to happen, because the kind of conversations that were happening, the kind of things that were being talked about, they did not really have a head or a tail. So, they were just
Yeah.
there for the fluff. So, I mean, I really hope that, Dubai becomes the hub of crypto and NFTs and everything, the metaverse, but they really need to work on the quality of people that they're inviting. They really need to, understand who the leaders are, who is, doing what. I mean, in Pakistan, everybody early on that was talking, a lot of crypto pros, they would be like, yeah, I had like 5 apes as well. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, cool. What were the numbers? And they wouldn't answer because they never had 5 apes. If you were an early ape, I would know you. The OGs would know you. There are a couple of us who've been here for a long time who can
Yeah.
tell what a certain person is.
Yeah.
So, and that it's not about just saying that, because we believe in that fluff kind of a thing.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I started doing public appearances as well, although I'm a little averse to sounding like an expert, because people then try to make you into like the like a face for an industry.
But that's the thing, no, Zain. That's why some people get that sort of recognition only because even though they might not know what they do, but they put up a face where they do, right? So they get all the recognition, which doesn't necessarily speak volumes of what they've actually done. Whereas
True.
there are people, for example, before, and we were talking about this right before the call as well, right? And after hearing you talk, right, I am actually wondering, why are you not being more out there about this? Because I personally, right, as someone who knows that there are so many people who want to get into this space, and there is a lot of knowledge and it's scattered all around us. There's so many people talking about this day in, day out. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, falana, falana, dhamaka. Lekin there's so, like, itne se log honge that you can actually trust, right?
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah.
very few people who actually know what they're talking about. The rest is pretty much like, नहीं जैसे इसका उठा के अपने मुंह से बोल दो, उसका उठा के repost कर दो, इधर का उठा के कुछ कर लो. So it's just not making sense anymore,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's why, honestly, like, as someone who is just starting to learn about the space and someone who knows there are so many others who are doing the same, we really need more people out there who are vetted properly, like you said, by these events, by these conferences, for people to bring in their knowledge about things that they've actually done, right? So I think, yeah, like what you said makes a lot of sense, and fully on board with the idea of, again, only listening to people that have that sort of a credible platform and credible voice to learn the actual knowledge. And I think you're definitely one of them, honestly. So please, one
Thank you for
learning that I would want you to take away from here, please be more out there.
No,
Please be
I'm trying.
there. Yeah,
And some of these problems that we are facing right now,
yeah.
a few products that we are working on in-house,
Mhm.
like with Otter, they are trying to, formulate solutions for these exact things.
Right.
That is what we are coming in with, because I think the global NFT crypto
Mhm.
space needs that change in discourse, and how we can facilitate that. That is essentially what we are working on.
Mhm.
Because
Amazing.
like Alter, from the name, it might sound like very simple, that it's like maybe for an alternative.
Mhm.
But for us, it's also like an altar, which is like a place to present something, like in a very religious or a holy manner.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, but I am. So
Mhm.
was that similar to Gandalf?
Mhm.
There are wizards in the lore of Lord of the Rings who essentially went to the east,
Okay.
to fight these forces of Sauron and everybody.
Right.
So, but they are not talked about because they went to the east. So we consider ourselves the wizards in the east, because so we are gonna cater to the things in the
Wow.
east, because this area is growing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people working in North America. There are a lot of people working in Europe, but somebody needs to cater to the global south,
Yeah.
So somebody needs to do that. So that's essentially us. Despite the fact that there are a lot of issues in terms of the governmental roadblocks, the policy roadblocks.
Of course.
So I mean that's where essentially Alter operates from the UK.
Mhm.
We are UK based. We have a presence in Pakistan, but it's more like a backlog. That's just because
Mhm.
I am here locally. So yeah, but it's, I mean, going forward, I mean, we're still a Web3 remote first company. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, yeah. Oh my God. Seriously, this is a power packed session for me as well. Like, I was not expecting, I was like thinking, here, haan, theek hai, he does know what he does. I'm going to learn more about what he does. But the way that you talk about the things that you do, I mean, complete shift of perspective, which is why, like, I am genuinely so glad and so happy that people will be able to hear your story through this. And
Thank
I hope
you.
and pray, inshallah, you keep growing bigger and keep doing all the amazing things that you do. I have one more question, one last question, which is complete segue in from what we've been talking about into another main topic that I really want to talk about, which is your advice for people on how to get started in Web3, and how, because I think there's two main questions that I personally get a lot. एक, Web3 में नौकरी कैसे मिलती है, ठीक है? एंड नौकरी कैसे मिलती है इज अ क्वेश्चन जो हम वेब 2 से लेकर आते हैं, ठीक है, और क्योंकि वेब 2 में भी वही अप्लाई होता है, वेब 3 में भी यही अप्लाई हो रहा है। वेब 3 में हम लोग घुसते कैसे हैं, लाइक इन अ सेंस वेयर डू आई लर्न, अगेन कमिंग टू द पॉइंट दैट वी वर डिस्कसिंग अर्लियर, who do I look at, where do I start? There is a lot of knowledge. How do I gather resources that apply to, you know, my level of knowledge, and then start building it, you know, layer by layer? So what is your advice, general advice for people for looking for a job, to get started in terms of knowledge? Yeah.
Yeah, generally, I'm a like very hardcore believer in cold emails. They've done some wonderful things for me, my career, my work in general. If somebody reaches out to me via cold email and is asking something that is not stupid,
Mm-hmm.
or is something that is he just wants me to sugarcoat it and present to him in like a few sentences, and the thing might be available on YouTube, that's the only time that I do not respond. If it's a general
Yeah.
query, I would love to do it.
Right.
Because at times people are asking you questions that जिनके जवाब already बाहर हैं.
Correct.
So I don't think you or me can tell them the process of entering Web3, because here, just for like I think like a YouTube short kind of a session.
Yeah.
So get on Twitter, get on Discord, talk to holders, talk to founders, look at platforms, look at artists, look at projects, understand what the different kind of projects are. Are you want to go more into PFPs? Do you want to go into more metaverses, AR, VR stuff? Do you want to go into more one-of-one art stuff? Because see, there are people out there who are making a good, collection or good money as an individual artist. But they still need, people who can maybe sort of design a brand for them. They might need a website. They might need somebody who can take care of, their dev kind of a responsibility. Maybe develop smart contracts for them. Then there's like, this understanding that essentially, who are you? Like, are you a Discord manager? Are you somebody who wants to learn and later, become a founder him or herself?
Right.
Are you a developer who wants to enter the space as a developer? Are you an artist or a designer? Now, one thing that I mean, from the art and design side, I get so many people who are, making like these truck art verse, like Pakistan verse. Now, and I always ask them, "Hey, like, who is gonna buy this? Why should I buy this? If I am like even putting, let's say, $50 or even like $10 into this, give me a good reason for it. Right? I mean,
A really good question.
and they don't have a reason. They don't have a reason. It's just like because it's cool, like adding the. I was just thinking today that adding, verse after anything that is being done right now is the new .com. So,
Right.
it's like, how in like the late 90s, early 2000s, everything was a .com. Like
Yeah.
even, good movies coming out would just put .com just for the heck of it, just to make
Yeah.
it cool. So anything with verse, is the new cool. So whether that's like the fashion
That makes
verse
a
or
lot
the
of sense. Yeah.
I don't know, it could be Zanverse, Saniaverse, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really make any sense because, you're not essentially building a metaverse, you're building a very small thing. So, and like, but you need to position it in a better way. So, and the other thing is like, I think it's a thing that I borrowed from like the startup world. You know more of this than I do, which is fail fast. So at least in the design and art world, the pace is really slow. So you take a lot of time building something, and then if it doesn't go well, you sit and ponder on it for a couple of months, and then you start again. So with me, there's just two things that I want to say. If anybody wants to take it like as career advice, one, I did not get here by being smart. I might not be the smartest person in the room. I might not even be the hardest working person in the room, but I am the person who builds other people up. I am super happy taking feedback from juniors, from people who are much smarter than me. So essentially, like, we were interviewing for a certain position at Alter,
Yeah.
and we were talking to this lady. She was like, a manager,
Mm-hmm.
and we told her the problem that we were facing, and she said something really, amazing, which was like, stop throwing money at problems. You guys are trying to solve problems by throwing money at them. So one, I felt really embarrassed after that. Two, I hired her. I was like, get this person on board because she is saying something that we couldn't see. that we were trying to solve a problem that needs a strategy or that needs, a different way of doing, money, and it's not solving our problem. And the other is like, run on kindness. We come from a place, sadly, जहाँ पे टांगे खींचने का बहुत ज्यादा कल्चर है. यार अगर सारे एक दूसरे की टांगे खींच रहे हैं तो फिनिश लाइन पे पहुंचेगा कौन?
Exactly.
मतलब,
Yeah.
it's like, a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, holding their knee. So for me, I mean, I am open to collaborations with anybody. वो मेरे थोड़ा सा मेरे लिए भी mental shift था कि यार, uh, not everybody needs to be a contemporary. Like, it's good to have contemporaries, it's good to have rivals, but only if you can see them leveling up and going, okay, it's time for me to level up as well,
Wow.
rather than कि आप ना देख के सड़के बैठ गए हो. Because
Exactly. Yeah.
like, I can't do everything myself.
Mhm.
So I'm a designer, I'm a accidental founder, I'm also a filmmaker, and I still want to make more films, but
Yes.
maybe I can do it like better as a producer rather than as a director. So maybe I can help other people achieve their dreams and still be part of that creative process.
Wow.
So those are the things that I've been thinking, because एक जिंदगी है, सारों के पास 24 घंटे ही है, 7 दिन है, मेरे पास कुछ एक्स्ट्रा तो नहीं है भाई. But
Yeah.
like, run on kindness. Please run on kindness. Yes, I know everybody is desperate and everybody comes from humble beginnings, but I don't think we're going to achieve anything if we keep on, stabbing each other all day long. Because then that becomes your primary motivation. That, you're trying to uh, rather build on the things that others are creating. Like, look at, if you can collaborate with a brand, look if you can collaborate with, an independent artist who's trying to break in, with a filmmaker, whoever it is. And I think slowly and steadily, specifically in Pakistan, we are starting to realize that. In South Asia in general, in the global east, that, if we want to go forward, and so that's what we need to do. And I mean, it's also the Web3 ethos. I mean, if you look at the fact that CryptoPunks and Meebits became part of the Yuga ecosystem, that's crazy to think about. It's like, you wake up one day and you hear that, okay, you know what? Subway has bought KFC or McDonald's. It's just because BAYC was still, not the biggest. It
Oh
was
my
still,
God.
second.
True. I love that example, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, imagine you wake up and, you discover that, Coke or Pepsi has purchased Coke, because I personally believe Coke would be the bigger one.
Yes.
Uh,
That's one to
without
that.
making it. So, yeah. So, I mean, or, DC has purchased Marvel all of a sudden. That must be.
Oh man, we're getting into controversial mode here, Zain. Yeah. But I have one last question here. I have one last question. I have heard your story, and mashallah, mashallah. I honestly can't stop saying how amazing it is. Touch wood. Yaar, I can't. Honestly, I really can't. Like, it's amazing. Mashallah, mashallah. I just want to know one thing from your side. You have done everything so far, and inshallah, aage bhi, related to art, related to design, related to building people up, related to building these amazing products that you're building at the moment. What does art mean to you?
I think I can only speak from a design point of view. As I said, I don't think I'm an artist, but I believe like art for me is anything that has the power to transform. So specifically, I look at code as art as well and algorithms as art as well, because if you look at it, those are the things that have changed us the most.
Wow.
So, I mean, the self-portrait has always been there. And the selfie is, whether I like it or not, is like it's like the next step in that. Masks or, alternative personalities have always been there.
True.
PFPs are maybe the next iteration of that. So art for me is pretty much that. But why I am bullish on technology specifically is because it's much easier to collect art now than it was maybe 100 years ago. Like right now, if I want to collect from like, a very huge international artist, and if he or she has an NFT collection, I can just go there and buy it, or a digital collectible as we like to call it now. They're not NFTs anymore; they're digital collectibles. So But like, let's say if you were go back 50 years, and if you were purchasing, let's say, a Picasso, it would be physically impossible for you to, take care of that painting.
True.
So, and it's still very, very hard to take care of physical art. I mean, I've been
Mhm.
collecting ever since I had graduated out. So
Yeah.
usually I collect from thesis shows because that's where most people are just, starting their career. So I
Mhm.
personally think that's a very good time to, collect art. And secondly, the nature of art, I think, is going to change because for a very long time, the only way we could collect or interact was like by having this image on our walls. But
Mm.
now it's become part of
Yeah.
our life. So it's on our phone screens, it's on our watches, and maybe tomorrow we could be immersed in it. So like all these AR and
Yeah.
VR products that are working out, you get some guests over, and maybe the things to do at dinner parties would be to get immersed in these
Mhm.
I would say AR experiences, or VR
Wow.
experiences. Who
Oh my
knows?
God. Wow.
So, I mean, I've been saying this 2 years ago. I was saying that NFTs and digital collectibles are going to change the world, and they did.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to sound prophetic or anything, but right now I am saying that maybe in 5 years' time, art is an ever-changing thing. It's an ever-evolving thing, like us humans. And maybe the next iteration or version of it would be very different from what it is today. Today, art is like, painting, sculptures, installations, projections, experiences. Maybe tomorrow it would be all AR, VR experience. Maybe, games would become more art-like, and maybe art would become more game-like, or,
Yeah.
experience-like. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, just been thinking of a very crazy thing. Maybe in the future we would have, movies where we are always casting our own celebrities, the ones that we want,
That would
and
be
maybe we're gonna tell
crazy.
our
Oh my
kids,
God.
that you know back in our day, like old, uncles and aunties, like back in our day, movies used to only come with one celebrities, and they'll be amazed at us. And what are you talking about? Like only one actor played one role.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you couldn't your own, cast. And maybe it will be very different for them than it is for us. I mean,
Amazing. Mhm.
I mean, look at the history of the printing press. Gutenberg's invention. It literally changed the trajectory of the world. The religions that adopted the printing press became much more prevalent.
Mm.
The people who adopted the printing press became much more, prevalent. In the similar manner, if you look at the radio, television,
Yeah.
the internet itself, and I think we're on that cusp again. And it's a very, very serious and a somber thing that we need to realize that, if we are not there, then what? And specifically, being from South Asia, being brown, I think, even gender wise, I
Mhm.
still think more women in the Web3 space.
Yes.
We desperately need more women in the Web3 space because beyond a certain point, thoda sa wo wolf pack mentality bhi aa jati hai.
Mhm.
And then founders start taking stupid because of that wolf pack mentality.
Mhm. Mhm.
So at times, the balance of gender, of ethnicities, of religion, maybe, is very important. So yeah, at least that is for me. Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. On that note, I mean, we're short on times, and I am so sorry about this, but I have had an absolute pleasure today to talk to you. Honestly, to hear about your journey and the way you think about life and about metaverse and Web3 and how you connect that with art and then design. And it's amazing. It's beautiful what you do. And honestly, I am so glad, so glad that, conversation on LinkedIn has ended up like this, an actual face-to-face conversation, still on Zoom, but it seems more, like a solid connection, which
Yeah.
I absolutely love. So thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you so much.
let's stay connected. And hopefully, I am sure people are going to learn so much through this. Definitely, for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.